Today, we're going to be talking about perfumery. Perfume holds a remarkable impact on societies, more than just a fragrance. It has become a potent cultural and social symbol across civilizations and epochs. Scents have actually woven themselves into the fabric of societal norms, rituals, and identities. Economically, the perfume industry stimulates trade, tourism, and also craftsmanship, supporting local economies and cultural heritage. With us today is Giulia Casanova Cavallo, a perfumer who previously served as the chief perfumer and worked at Symrise, one of the most important players in the space of fragrance. Giulia, welcome. It's amazing to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. This is a pleasure, and I'm sure we are going to have a great time together.
Yes, I'm sure. So take us to the beginning, Giulia, of how it all started.
Okay, so I think this passion of mine comes from my childhood. I was always a very creative girl, and I love playing, creating foods for my toys, or like perfumes or poisons. So that was one thing. And on the other side, I love fragrances. I was this typical, very girly girl. So one day I found out I could create, instead of poisons, maybe fragrances. And that's the beginning, basically.
Okay, so your creativity started at childhood. Do you think creativity is something that we are born with, or is it something we learn?
Okay, I think, in my case, I think I was born with it. I think everyone can be more creative than what they believe they are. I think it's like everything. You always can learn something, but sometimes it's in your nature to have this skill. But yeah, you can do exercises to think out of the box and having crazy ideas, I guess.
What do you think, as a perfumer, and as someone who's so passionate about perfume creation, what do you think is the big impact that perfume has on society or on our lives in general?
Okay. I mean, I think this question is complex because on the one hand, I think perfumes affect societies, but also I think the societies will affect the perfume industry. So in the past, obviously, perfume existed since Mesopotamia, that they were like very, of course, natural perfumes, residues, and then Egyptians loved fragrances and cosmetics. And then we go to like more modern times where the first synthetic molecules were discovered. So they become, it was this trend of aldehydic perfumes like Chanel No. 5. And then every time there is a new discovery, I guess, there is like this new trend. But also, on the other hand, that's what I was saying, like what is happening in the world affect the industry. So if there is a shortage of, let's say, Styrax, that is like a leathery note, it's a balsamic note, natural note, it's a resin coming from a tree. If there were a natural disaster, this note will disappear. So maybe some type of perfumes will be affected. Or like if we look at 2021, COVID, it was a very difficult time where cleaning everything was a thing. So I think afterwards, the kind of notes that we were wearing, maybe they were lighter, like more like a cleaning lemony, like cologne type again. Okay. Because maybe you would associate that you would be safer in a way if you're wearing these things. So I think everything that happens affects the perfumes, and the perfumes also affect societies.
So what I'm hearing is that it's not just culture that impacts perfume, it's about the era or the environment or the events of that period, such as COVID, for example, where people were turning to more fresh, clean notes.
Yeah. It's like a very alive art, maybe. And of course, where you are born and the culture you have, it might affect your taste to fragrances. So people who are not very passionate about fragrances, they would go for fragrances that are trendy in their countries so the bestsellers.
Yeah.
And for instance, it's funny that in Spain, I'm from Spain, or like in here, for instance, maybe rose is associated to women because it's like feminine. But in the Middle East, rose is for everyone. So a man could be wearing a rose and he's a very manly man. So all of these things are affecting your conception of a...
I was going to ask you about culture, but since you mentioned this, I think this part is quite interesting, where cultures have specific preferences, and perfume has specific meanings in different cultures. How is it different, for example, between, say, Europe, United States, and the Far East, such as China or Japan?
So I think Europe, because perfumery is not French only, but it's quite French. So the type of perfume like Cologne, Chypre, are very European. So using like aromatic herbs, flowers, woods, like a very mixture of things, but always with this citrusy note of bergamot, for instance, or lemon. Like at the end, raw materials that years ago when there was like difficulties to move ingredients from one place to the other one, they were more locally sourced. So that's traditionally what it was from Europe. Whereas maybe in the Middle East, if something more woody like oud, and very heavy fragrances, because also it's very hot, so they want to make sure they are wearing something powerful enough, I guess, in case you are sweating or something like that. And in the States, not sure why, to be honest, but like very sweet fragrances are always very successful there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something to do with the food industry or because that's the trends they took from Europe, but more, I mean, they like it better. So yeah, I would say these things. Then in Asia, by like looking at China, for instance, or Japan, they are much more delicate. They would go for floral fragrances with notes of lily of valley, tulip, like something subtle. They don't want to overwhelm the room maybe with their fragrances. But I think that's part of their culture. It would be maybe rude, I think.
It's very interesting how culture has a big role in influence, and I'm sure some of the big brands take this into account when designing not just the perfume, but perhaps also the bottle design and perhaps various elements of the perfume creation as well. So just tell us a little bit about your background in terms of what you studied exactly and what's the science behind it.
Okay. So as I said before, I always knew I wanted to become a perfumer as soon as I found out that this was like a real job. So the natural path to follow, it was studying chemistry. I studied chemistry at uni, but even though I love it, it was not specialized in fragrances. So once I finished, I went to Grasse in La Côte d'Azur, and I studied there perfumery in a beautiful school that is called Grasse Institute of Perfumery. And it was great because they only take 12 people per year. So it's a bit hard to get into it, but if you're lucky enough to be in, it's wonderful. So the year was basically studying raw materials, smelling everything, learning how to make like the structure of iconic fragrances or like a fougère, a Chypre, like distinguish between type of fragrances. So I did that for a year. And then during this year, the sponsor of my perfumery school was Symrise, which is a big fragrance house. So I did like a little internship with them in their headquarters in Holzminden in Germany. So I moved there for a while. Then I went to Barcelona with them. But it was during pandemia when all of this was happening, so there were no positions, like fixed positions. So I got an opportunity here in London to work as a perfumer for a very prestigious brand that is called Floris London. They are like the royal perfumers.
Yes, Floris is very well known, yes.
Yes, so it was a beautiful experience working there because they have the store besides Piccadilly, and I was creating bespoke fragrances for customers. So I was doing consultations, and that was giving me a very good understanding of what people want because the public were not only from England. I had people from everywhere. So the requests, they were different, and I also, that's why I know what people tend to like when they are coming from certain parts of the world. So that was nice. And then I had this feeling of creating something by myself and that I was aligned with and the story behind. So I decided to create my own brand that is called Amen Collections. And with this brand, I was trying to capture culture and translating different stories about different cultures into fragrances. Because I think the perfumery world and the perfumery school, and since then I've been traveling quite a lot and meeting many different people. And one thing that fascinates me is understanding the cultures of different, parts of the world and why you are like that. And I think the more you know about others, the wider is your view. So it's beautiful. And I wanted to, catch these beautiful stories and translate it into fragrances. So I did that. And also right now I work sometimes as a freelance for other brands. And I work for Elixerum, which is a fragrance house here in the UK, based in Kent. And there I'm the chief perfumer. And yeah, it's all great. I'm having so much fun.
As a chief perfumer at the organization where you are at the moment, what are your responsibilities? What do you do on a daily basis?
Okay, so it's a very small company, so I do everything. So I'm in charge of creations, of course, but also reworks. Sometimes because of legislation, a fragrance that it was created before cannot be used as such anymore because there is they lower the level of this ingredient, so you have to, either replace or maybe you cannot source that ingredient anymore. So I do these replacements, and also I do analysis of fragrances, so to understand better structures of other fragrances, and you learn by analyzing maybe what other people has made. So it's very interesting. It's very complex. It's a little bit of, chemistry when we are speaking about this analytical part. And obviously, the creation is you playing and having fun.
So you brought up something really interesting, which is intellectual property, or, not being able to replicate something that exists. To most people, this is something very difficult to do because smell is not something that's easy to, in the olfactive sense, to copyright or to have a trademark. So how do you do that?
How do you protect the fragrances?
Yes.
That's very complex. Actually, no one can protect the smell. So even me as a brand founder, I would like no one to be able to copy my fragrances. If someone is good enough copying, they can do it. So you can protect, obviously, the name, the brand is registered. So you cannot copy these marketing parts of the fragrance, but the scent as such, you cannot. But I must say it's really hard because I have analyzed many fragrances from the market, and because that's where how you understand how to create, for instance, a banana, let's say, banana fragrance. So when you analyze a fragrance, you don't see ingredient by ingredient at all. You see peaks. You see it's a chromatogram. So you see peaks, signals that you have to, there is a machine that it will tell you what it is. Sometimes it will tell you nothing, unrecognized. And another one will quantify. But there are so many molecules that could come from many ingredients. There is one molecule, linalool, that when you buy a perfume, if you look at the label in the back, in the allergens, you would say linalool, limonene. There are some that are always there. Linalool is mostly in every single natural raw material that you could ever find. So if you are trying to analyze a fragrance with bergamot, lemon, lavender, rose, the quantity that is coming from linalool, you cannot say, oh, this is coming from bergamot or it's coming from lemon, or no, not lemon, lavender. You cannot see very well where it's coming from. So it's always like a guessing thing. So it's like you have to combine the analysis, the chemical analysis, with your smelling skills. And with that, you might be or might not be able to replicate something. So that's why whenever you buy something that is a replica of a fragrance, it's never going to be the same. People, I think, tend to think they are not as long-lasting as the original one, or they are not as good. And to be honest, it's not that. It's just, it's not going to be the same. Maybe the one, the dupe one, the duplicate one, maybe it's more long-lasting. It could be, if they have used more woody or more ambery notes than in the original one. So maybe that one is more long-lasting, and you might like it better. But it's never going to be the same. And yeah, as a fragrance founder, I don't support, these dupes. Like, to me, it's like in fashion, where you can afford in perfumes or in clothing, because there is so much work behind a creation. So, I mean, it is what it is, and it works like this, the industry. But I think there are so many scents. So why would you go for something that it's that, but it's not quite right?
Yes, but there are some icons, that came, like Angel.
Yes.
Or, for example, Chanel No. 5, which has been around since the 20s, 1920s. So, there's some iconic perfumes that have kind of broken the rules or the norm with their notes. And you either love it or hate it. Yeah. And so I think, it's quite interesting, the area of intellectual property and perfume. It's a very, very hot topic. You know?
I think everyone, like in everything, in any kind of art, you have inspiration of something, because you might smell for the first time Chanel No. 5, and you might be delighted by the soapy smell on the top, that is the aldehydes. And then you have your brand and you are like, okay, I want something with this kind of vibe. That's great. Like, you take this part of it. So I think having inspiration or references is a compliment to other brands. So I'm not against that at all. But I think creating the same for cheaper, it's not what I would go for personally. But I understand if many people does. I mean, that's fine.
What I really want to understand your point of view on is, what role do perfumers play in society?
Oh, wow. Well, there are many kinds of perfumers. I think the ones people tend to know are very big perfumers. They are creative perfumers from big fragrance houses, or independent perfumers that they have their little business or something like this. But there are also technical perfumers that in a big organization, they would work on these reworks that I was talking about, and they will adapt the formulas to new updates of the legislation, or they would take a fine fragrance profile, like a Chanel No. 5, into a hand soap. For instance, that's a reason to analyze an iconic fragrance, because you want this scent, this profile, into maybe a candle. But if you were putting the same perfume oil straight away, it wouldn't work in a candle. You have to adapt the formula to a different base. So there are so many kind of perfumers that some they would create things, and that are the ones that maybe have more impact in the society, because they are the ones that might create the next Angel. And then it would be like a new trend, and it would be, of all of these gourmand fragrances, the iconic one always would be Angel. Or like the aldehydics always would be Chanel No. 5. Or right now we are living, I think, in the Baccarat Rouge era, that is from Francis Kurkdjian. And it's this very ambery but a little bit sweet fragrance. And I think that was the fragrance that introduced this ambery profile more in Europe.
Yes.
So there is always like a fragrance that changes sometimes. And is this creativity what makes that possible?
So where do you find your inspiration when you're creating a perfume?
It's hard to say, I think. I think it's like an inner voice you have. It's like, it could be anything. Like I could watch a movie or listening to a song and then have a random thought that gives you like an idea. But the idea could be a texture, it could be a color, it could be I don't know. It's very complex. It's like an idea. So I always, if I want to be very creative and create something that is going to make a difference, I make a mood board with pictures. I'm very visual, I think. So I need like different colors together with like maybe feathers or like something metallic, like just to have the interpretation of how is the feeling of that fragrance going to be. And when I have the picture clear in my head, then I just know exactly what I have to do.
Interesting how you translate different elements into the olfactive realm. Very interesting.
Yes, like a synesthesia.
So do you have any iconic figures that you look up to or any people that have influenced your style of creation?
Okay, in terms of style of creation, I really admire Jean-Claude Ellena, who is the perfumer that used to be Hermès for a long, long time. Now he's independent. And also he works sometimes with Frédéric Malle. And all of his creations are very unique to me. He has a signature very clearly, like rhubarby notes, a bit green. But his style is very simple and minimalist. And I like that. Like I like, before in the past, formulas used to have maybe 80 ingredients, which is crazy. Because if one of them is not available, the perfume is going to change. So I think Jean-Claude, he likes keeping it simple. And if you can go down to 10 ingredients and that smells good, that's super successful. So I like that. I like to create my fragrance with no limits at the beginning. And then anything that I cannot smell or I do not feel the impact, because sometimes you don't smell an ingredient, but it's making something, like it is pushing another ingredient. So if there is no effect, there is no reason for this ingredient to be there. So I like to do this. Like
minimalist.
Yeah, create and then clean.
Create and then clean. I like that. In terms of your journey so far, if you reflect on it, has there been any sort of grand or memorable moments that have shaped your career so far?
Well, yes, I had a beautiful career so far. So, for instance, it was great when at my perfume school there was like a little contest between all of us. So we had to create a sustainable fragrance using a raw material.
Sustainable as in environmentally friendly?
Yes. We had to be very aware. So it was Simrise who proposed this to us, and they assigned us an ingredient to all of us. Each one had one. Mine, it was
single?
Yes, a single ingredient that you had to use compulsory, and they were ingredients that they were maybe tricky to find or they could disappear. So you had to create a fragrance using this ingredient and making it noticeable, and then creating the same fragrance without the ingredient, but replacing it with other things, just in case this natural ingredient could disappear. So I had to use this leathery note that smells like new leather, Styrax.
Yes.
And I created like a perfume inspired in Sevilla, in Spain, and the flamenco culture with the dancers.
Amazing.
So the leathery shoes, and it was like dusty, like when you dance in the tablao, like that's the place where they dance. So it was dusty and leathery. It was really fun. But then, and it was a bit winey as well. But then recreating the fragrance without the ingredient, it was very difficult. So they chose my creations as the winner, and that was really nice because it was Maurice Roussel, who is a master perfumer, who the jury chose, and that was great. But then I did perfumery contests, and I had the pleasure to win one. I did an amazing perfume for the Royal Art Academy here in London for an artist, William Kentridge, who is from South Africa. So I had like very highlighted moments.
So the artist was a perfumer or a painter?
He was a painter.
All right.
Painter, sculptor, artist, like this typical profile, very artistic. He's so great. And he was using like a lot of woods, papers, turpentine, ink. So he wanted something that smelled like that, like capturing his piece. But he was creating in a garden, so it has like a green note from the garden where he was working at. I don't know, it was like a very complex and beautiful fragrance that I had the pleasure to create after his masterpiece. So it was beautiful.
So that sounds very exciting, to be honest. Can we switch careers? So again, you translated a painting into an olfactive
more than
symphony.
Yeah, more than the painting, that it wasn't one, but he was drawing a lot of flowers, and his studio where he was painting and creating, it was in his South African garden. So, and he was wearing like a white shirt always and gray trousers. So I wanted like a very clean gentleman smell with this garden note, with the woody note from his frames and the pens and everything, and the paint smell. So it was like him and his studio and his masterpiece into a bottle.
What was his reaction when he smelt it? Did he like it?
Yeah, he really liked it, and he was wearing it when he opened the exhibition at the Royal Art Academy. So
Fabulous.
It was great.
Yes, I thank you for sharing that story.
No problem.
It's a lovely story, and it just shows how perfumers are very special people, because you are able to translate a smell, and you're able to decompose a smell, and also you're able to imagine a composition before you put it together, which as you know, other people who are not perfumers, after smelling a couple of perfumes, you know, it goes completely, yes.
I mean, that part is true. Like, people tend to get overwhelmed by smelling, but I think it's training also. Like, at the end, when you study perfumery, you are smelling all day long, 24/7.
Yes.
So you get used to this saturation of scents.
Yes.
But yeah, we are very lucky people. I think we have a very beautiful job.
Yes.
I wouldn't change it.
One thought I had was, when you're creating, do you ever have a creative block?
Yeah, what it happens sometimes is that when you create for a long time the same fragrance, you don't smell it anymore. So you just smell the last thing you added to this fragrance. So you just smell one ingredient, that is the last one you put. Imagine you've been working for 2 months in the same thing, only one project. This never happens because you always have like many projects. But if you're focusing on one, and then you say, okay, I'm going to add cedarwood today, you only smell the cedarwood. So you believe you overdose that cedarwood. So you need someone else to smell it for you. And then you ask, like, is it dry and woody for you? And they're like, no, I don't smell that. So it's like, how come? Because that's the only thing I can smell. So yeah, you go blind to your creation. So you need to sometimes to have
Step away.
Yeah.
Maybe come back later.
Yeah, have a break. It's good.
Right. So I noticed that perfume houses, such as Guerlain or various others which are quite prominent in this space, whenever they create a new perfume over the years, all their perfumes, you feel like it's within a certain style, or you immediately know this is a Chanel perfume or this is a Guerlain perfume, no matter what the composition is. What's the secret behind that?
Well, I think it's like a kind of marketing tool, marketing strategy, to have like a profile. It's like a style. It's like, maybe it's because it's not visual, that's why it's confusing. But in clothes, you also could recognize, if you're looking at bags without seeing the label, who is the brand behind. Because it's true, like sometimes in Guerlain or like, I don't know, for instance, Hermes, they change perfumers, and still they have this very Hermes style. So I guess it's like they just define, we want something like fresh, luxurious, for men and women. They have very clear targets, and that's why they have, well, this scent that you can recognize. Sometimes I think they have like a base, like a common base in some of them.
That must be it. Yes.
I feel this, and I'm not sure because I've never worked for them, but I feel this with Penhaligon's. I think Penhaligon's has a very Penhaligon's style.
Yes.
And I could distinguish a fragrance if you put 10 and one is Penhaligon's, I'm sure. And if you know the brand, you could distinguish because they have this kind of musky, ambery base that is very comfortable.
Penhaligon's and Floris, two of the perfumes which are very strongly of English heritage or British heritage. And so perhaps, you know, they try to translate that into their perfumes. It's very interesting because, like you, whenever I smell a Guerlain perfume, if you put it amongst many other bottles, it's very clear that this is a Guerlain perfume.
Yeah.
In the depth of the perfume and its strength.
Yeah.
You can almost imagine a picture of it. that, you know.
Yeah.
Can you translate it into pictures? So with Chanel number 5, it comes to me in a block, in a square, not a triangle. So it's not base, middle, top. It comes to me in a block.
Okay.
Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it could be. So at the end, not all the fragrances have very distinguished top, middle, and base notes. I think Chanel number 5, it does have very top notes. There are these aldehydes. Maybe you don't smell them very well. It could be that you focus more on the jasmine, ylang ylang part of it. So the fragrance is very floral. But on the top, you have these orangey notes, like the zest of the orange and mandarin. You have these aldehydes. And then in the base notes, you have a very musky note. But it goes very attached with the heart. That is this ylang ylang and jasmine. So maybe for some reason, you are more connected with the floral note. And you just smell it more in a block, I guess. But have you ever worn it?
Yes, I have. Yes, it was gifted to me, a big bottle. So I have worn it in the past, and it's very powdery.
Yeah, true.
And it probably resembles the trend of that era in the 1920s or 1928. But other perfumes like Coco Mademoiselle and various others are more modern. And I feel like Chanel number 5 has now become more popular among young women recently, in the recent past, since, you know, Nicole Kidman did this mini movie advert with Moulin Rouge and then Eau de Tattoo, and, you know, it's become more popular among young women.
Yeah.
But, it's fascinating how they intertwine this with art, celebrities, with a movie even, you know, shaped after a movie. So in what ways, I mean, when you're creating all these creations, whether it's an inspiration or you're given a draft that you need to follow, what are some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
Okay. So one challenge I find is not copying yourself. I think you think in the way you think. So if you ever have to create the same type of fragrance, let's say, I don't know, bergamot, rose, vanilla fragrance with these 3 notes as main, you would always think, okay, I'm going to create a rose, and I like creating the rose in this way. So sometimes I find myself creating the same fragrance once and another time, and I'm like, no. So you need to think in a different way to what you would think normally. So you have to experiment, like maybe overdosing an ingredient that you never tried before, or adding something else that it might be a little bit rosy, but not rosy for you. Like you wouldn't go for that ingredient to create a rose normally. So it's very challenging for me sometimes not being very repetitive. And my career just started, let's say, like when I'm 50, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I need to to learn how to think in many different ways.
And so how do you stay informed about what's happening in the industry and the innovations?
Well, so nowadays it's really easy because Instagram, YouTube, everyone is sharing everything. So you discover many brands, even sometimes with adverts on your phone. But the best thing for me is going to a mall, a store, and smelling everything. Like, I love going by myself 2 hours, smelling everything, chatting to the people who are selling the perfumes.
Okay.
I love doing that.
Do you tell them I'm a perfumer?
Sometimes. So I don't do it straight away because I want to hear what they tell to the people. I want to know if they are saying, oh, this has real strawberries. Well, impossible. So I want to see if they lie or if they don't lie. And also I want to know if they've been told this, because sometimes, they really think they have squeezed strawberries and put them in a bottle, and this never happens. So I like to learn this. Sometimes I also discover new things, or like they might describe a fragrance I already know in a different way. And I'm like, oh, actually, it does smell like that. So you can really learn from these people. They know the best, and they are in contact with customers. So you also can get to know what people are requesting. So it's really good for me to know, okay, maybe next time I should go for something more woody, or, it's perfect. I love it. And also I love listening to other people, smelling the fragrances, maybe mom and daughter, and just see what they are sharing between them. I love doing that.
I see. So you go beyond the creative practice and you do some quality check, quality control, some feedback, keeping your ear to the ground, hearing what the customers are saying. That's brilliant, because then you can feed back into your own inspiration, maybe, or creation.
Yeah, because if you just, create something, or if you just smell the other creations from other perfumers and you only have your own perspective, it's very narrow. So the beauty about perfumery is that all of us, we smell in different ways. So we might smell the same perfume, and for you, maybe it's sweet, and for me, maybe it's very floral, and we both are right. So, yeah, the more you share, the more you know.
Perception of the perfume is different. And the interaction with the skin as well is quite different.
So different.
Yes. What advice would you give students or those people aspiring to go into this space in terms of the key skills to have to succeed?
Okay, I think, the main skill you have to be patient, because it's not an easy industry. Perfumery schools are very limited, and the spaces in those are very limited as well. So you never give up if that's what you want. And also, when you graduate, you don't work usually as a perfumer. You might have to work in different areas of perfumery until you get this opportunity. And then you can give the best of yourself. But it's like a complex industry, so patience is key.
Yes.
And also listen to yourself, because when you create, you don't have to hear, when you are creating, you don't have to hear, this is too sweet or this is too blah, 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 because you only know what you are creating and what you want to achieve. So when it's done, then listen, because maybe you have to adjust something, but you have to listen to yourself and to your creativity, have your own inspiration in different things. But it's very important, I think, your inner voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the last episode, I had somebody from the fashion field. And so we were talking about the fashion industry and creativity in that field. Do you see any links between the two industries, or any relationship between the two?
Yeah, I do. I think fashion is a maybe faster market. Like, there are more, collections all the time, but there is a style. So I think for every brand, there is a style, and most of the brands, they have perfumes that are representing this style. So I think it's really connected, and if a perfumer is working for one brand, they need to understand very well the fashion of that brand. So I think it is connection, but I think the perfume is more like representation of the style rather than of the moment of that brand, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes, yes. Well, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think I would like to share that people should go to these shops and smell and try on them and try to look for their own identity in fragrances. Do not copy your best friend's fragrance because maybe your best friend wouldn't like that. And also because maybe that smells great, but it's not you. Like we all of us have like a thing. So it's really fun to go there and discover, try different things. Men, women's, it doesn't matter. There is no gender for me actually in scents. So just try all and then find your thing, because it's like a very powerful tool. When you feel a little bit down, you can spray your fragrance and you just glow.
Wow, this was very inspiring. It makes me want to go and try different perfumes and do some perfume shopping.
Yeah, you should.
Yes, it's an expression of who you are as well.
Yeah.
So, Julia, it's been an absolute delight to have you and to have this conversation with you. Thank you very much once again for joining, and I hope to stay in touch.
Thank you very much. I love it. Thank you. It was so much fun.
Thank you.